The bassist's brother Greg Mounfield announced his death on social media. In a post on Facebook, he said, "It is with the heaviest hearts that I have to announce the sad passing of my brother Gary Mani Mounfield, RIP. Mani's brother went on to say he had been reunited with his beautiful wife Emma. The musician from Crumpsall in Manchester joined the Stone Roses in 1987 and performed on 2 albums, until they disbanded in 1996. He went on to become the bassist in Primal Scream. Tributes have been paid to him from across the world of music, entertainment, and beyond. Speaking to ITV Granada reports, the mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, described him as a warm, engaging, and incredible person. He went on to say, "It's like a punch to a stomach. He's such a character and it's so hard to get my head around the shock of him not being with us. But he will forever be a Manchester legend and a member of, in my view, the greatest band in my lifetime." The Charlatans' lead singer Tim Burgess described him as one of the absolute best in every way and such a beautiful friend. From this moment, the world seemed to take a collective pause, as if the news of Mani's passing carried a weight too heavy to absorb in one breath, even for those who had never met him, or had only known him through the thumping pulse of his bass lines blasting from car radios, pub speakers, festival amps, or late-night playlists. The shock felt strangely personal. It was the kind of moment that reminded people of where they were when they first heard the Stone Roses, where they were when they realized that music could be something more than noise, that it could feel like rebellion, like freedom, like youth, like Manchester itself. As the news spread across social media, the timeline became a flood of stories, images, and grainy footage of sweaty gigs where Mahoney stood in his signature stance, relaxed shoulders, bass low, face calm, like he was channeling something from somewhere deeper than the stage. Friends, fans, celebrities, and fellow musicians shared memories that painted a fuller picture of the man behind the legend, someone who loved a laugh, loved a pint, loved a crowd, and loved the idea that music could belong to anyone who needed it. To understand why his death cut so deeply, one has to understand what Mani represented, not just musically, but culturally, spiritually, emotionally, to an entire generation. Long before TikTok trends, streaming algorithms, or curated playlists, there were bands like the Stone Roses, bands that weren't just listened to, but lived through, and Mahoney was one of the beating hearts inside that movement. The Stone Roses were the sound of defiance and youthful swagger. A band that made English guitar music cool again at a time when it desperately needed something raw, something real. Mani's bass playing wasn't simply rhythmic support, it was the melodic spine that held everything together. Born Gary Mounfield in Crumpsall, Manchester, he grew up in a working-class environment where music was often an escape, a passion passed from friend to friend, or from older siblings to younger ones. Manchester has always had a reputation for raising musicians who carry their city like a badge of honor. And Mani was no exception. He once described his childhood as noisy, full of people, full of chaos, and full of dreams too big for the streets he ran around on. Like many Mancunian artists, he wasn't raised with the idea that fame was possible, but with the idea that music could be a way to express everything. Working-class kids weren't taught to verbalize. When he joined the Stone Roses in 1987, the band was still rough around the edges, still experimenting, still trying to carve out an identity in a British music landscape filled with synthpop, post-punk, and artists searching for what came after the 80s. Mani's arrival wasn't just the addition of a bassist, it was the missing ingredient. He brought rhythm, groove, and a sense of swagger that completed the Roses' sound. Fans often say the Stone Roses became the Stone Roses the moment Mani plugged in. His bass lines on tracks like I Wanna Be Adored, She Bangs the Drums, Waterfall, and Fool's Gold became iconic, instantly recognizable, impossibly smooth, and deceptively simple. He had the rare ability to make the bass feel like a lead instrument without ever trying to outshine the rest of the band. It wasn't about ego or flashiness. He played with pure instinct, pure feel, pure Manchester. When the Stone Roses released their self-titled debut album in 1989, it wasn't just critically acclaimed, it became a generational cornerstone. Many fans describe hearing the album for the first time as a life-altering moment. Entire youth cultures formed around that record. It inspired fashion, attitudes, and the so-called Manchester movement. And Mani's playing was at the center of it. The hypnotic low-end heartbeat that pulled listeners in and held them there. Even those who didn't grow up in the 90s still discovered the Roses later and found themselves swept into a world that felt timeless. That's the thing about Mani's musicianship, it doesn't age. His bass work still sounds as confident and stylish today as it did decades ago, after the band's breakup in 1996. A moment fans still discuss with a mix of heartbreak and acceptance. Mani refused to disappear or fade into nostalgia. Instead, he stepped into another legendary group, Primal Scream. Joining Primal Scream wasn't just a new chapter, it was a whole new adventure. Bobby Gillespie's band had always been known for pushing boundaries, blending rock, electronic, punk, and psychedelic sounds into something uniquely theirs. And Mani fit right in. He brought an energy that revitalized the band, helping shape their live performances into legendary spectacles. People who attended Primal Scream concerts in the late 90s and 2000s still recall Mani as one of the most charismatic presences on stage, grinning, nodding, letting the bass lines roll out of his fingertips like it was second nature. His chemistry with the band felt effortless, almost telepathic, like he had been part of their musical DNA all along. Yet with all his success, Mani remained loved because he never acted like a rock star. He was approachable, grounded, and undeniably human. Stories of him chatting with fans outside venues, buying rounds at pubs, or laughing his way through backstage interviews are countless. He treated everyone, whether a lifelong friend or someone he'd just met, with the same warmth and authenticity. This is why, when he lost his beloved wife Imelda in 2022, the outpouring of sympathy from the music world was immense. They had shared a deep and loving bond, something friends often described as unshakable. And her death left a wound in Mani that those close to him could feel. When his brother wrote that Mahoney had been reunited with his beautiful wife, fans understood the emotional weight behind those words. It didn't ease the pain of losing Mahoney, but it added a bittersweet layer to the grief, as if somewhere beyond the world we know, two souls were finally together again. As tributes poured in after Mani's passing, they weren't just messages of sadness, they were love letters. Andy Burnham's heartfelt reaction encapsulated what many Mancunians felt, that Mani wasn't just a musician, but part of Manchester's cultural heartbeat. The Stone Roses weren't just a band from Manchester, they were Manchester. And Mani's personality, humor, attitude, and sound were woven into the very fabric of the city's identity. Tim Burgess's words echoed this sentiment too. Calling Mahoney one of the absolute best in every way wasn't hyperbole, it was truth. In the music industry, where egos often overshadowed talent, Mahoney was admired not just for his skill but for his spirit. Musicians respected him, fans adored him, friends cherished him. As the hours passed, more stories surfaced from producers who remembered his work ethic, two fellow bassists who saw him as a master of the craft, two younger artists who credited him as an influence. One musician wrote that Mani was the reason I picked up a bass in the first place. Another said, "There will never be another groove like Mani's." Someone else shared a video of Mani laughing uncontrollably during a backstage interview, writing, "This is exactly how I'll remember him."